Okay, well, I guess while I have access to these ideas, I would like to say a few things that really are in response to what Faith asked, related to a memorial service, that maybe there's a few people who would be appropriate to talk about what. And maybe I could first be a little more general. I was saying to Faith that although I never was very good or too interested in just puzzles as puzzles, that I liked working on scientific puzzles, because if you could solve little puzzles, make some progress, it was connected to a bigger tapestry of other puzzles, just the way that Faith maybe enjoys crossword puzzles, but likes acrostics better, because when you solve the little puzzles, you get to see the bigger puzzle. And I think there is an analogy. In my own mind, just doing things for pleasure and solving little, whether it's mathematical problems or something, but to solve it in the context of other things, that always gave me more pleasure and was really where my interest was. I was never really consistently had the energy just to solve individual puzzles. If I think over my interest of what problem in science was I personally interested in, in accelerated physics we call it collective phenomena. It's a different, not exactly the same problem, but in statistical mechanics, one aspect of it was phase transitions, but it really has to do with how the behavior of a whole system can be can become different or more than the behavior of just its individual parts. That when you have a phase transition, the characteristics of the whole system, of course, they're determined by their components, but there's new macroscopic, means larger scale, things that come in, and that was always found that extremely interesting, and that actually arises. It turns out to go into all kinds of parts of science, and probably even philosophy. To me, that was always a problem that I wanted to solve. I had a little time, but not a lot of time to work on that. But when I did accelerated physics, there's a problem, also collective phenomena, and there actually you're trying to maybe prevent the collective phenomena from happening, because when they happen, it causes what's called an instability that messes up the system. And but in other aspects, actually, maybe the collective phenomena can even be good, and could be life. So maybe you want the collective phenomena. But just how collective phenomena arise or arose was always very interesting to me, and it's a problem I would have liked to be able to have a little quiet time to look more deep into. Statistical mechanics, I can just say a little something, was probably where if I could have chosen, I would have studied statistical mechanics more. Right? But life is very complicated, and you don't always get to choose, and probably had more choice than most people. I did have a little time to do that, and it was a very short time. When we came to Stony Brook, and when I was in solid state physics or whatever.
When you were a postdoc.
When I was a postdoc, yeah. So I did have some time, and I did some work. And then I needed to find a way to earn a living, and I had the opportunity to work on accelerated physics. Not an easy thing, because especially at Brookhaven, accelerated physics is not really thought of as a science. So it's very hard to be able to look into it in any professional way beyond what's needed just to try to make some machine work for other people to use it. I want to say that it ties into probably my family, that to my father, who was a doctor and devoted his life and was a wonderful person in his own way, and was a loving person. His first priority was always medicine and his patient. And although he had a generosity and love for me, it was always clear to me that I was second behind his passion for medicine and his patient. And being a human being, although I loved him, and I understood the gentleness of his spirit, I was always very angry that he was never available for me. And I always, from the beginning, told myself if I ever had the opportunity to have children or a family, a wife. Besides, my father and mother were very close, so it was really, and they had the same language because my mother was also a doctor. But I felt very isolated and outside. But I said if I ever had a family, I had a wife and children, that they would be what was the most important for me, and I would never, even in the tiniest way, make the mistake of thinking that whatever work I might be doing had any comparison important to my relationship with my wife or my children. And it was never hard for me. That's where my heart was. At any time there was ever a choice, I believe it's true, that without even thinking, I think I always want to choose to be with my family. And I think that's always been the right choice. It wasn't even a choice, it just is. It was beyond choice. I think in regard to the design of storage rings and the design of synchrotron light sources, probably John Galida would be the person that would know the most about my work. John would know all kinds of personal things as well as all the depth of any technical issues, and as they arose in time, and all the practical difficulties related to human beings and institutions that John and I and Richard Heath and others had to face to try to make the original NSLS-1, to try to make it work. So there were technical problems, but there were probably much more difficult people issues. And together we were very young, but in the end it worked very well. We had an energy and a drive to just say this had to work. Because to be honest, not for any general thing. I think it was our lives, our career. We had to earn a living, and also our pride. We knew that if we could have said what to do, we'd have done things very differently. But we couldn't say what to do. We tried to say what to do. And if it had done what we said, it wouldn't have been perfect, but it would have gone so much easier. And I think that's proved by John's experience at LCLS, where he is in charge, and things go the way he wants, and things went beyond anybody's imagination, beyond anybody's imagination how well LCLS came on. And obviously, to build NSLS-1 was trivial compared to that. So it wasn't a lack of knowledge. We could have made that machine work. For years we weren't allowed to make that machine work. It's such a confirmation of something I deeply believe, that if young people are allowed to do what's sensible, what they know, that things will work out. It's when older people with fixed ideas get in the way and don't let young people do what they need to do that bad things happen, I think. It was a pleasure for me to have an opportunity to work on free electrons. Storage rings were understood. I tried to, but free electron lasers, there was and probably still is a lot that's not understood about them. And so it was more in the character of research, which was closer to my heart. Claudio Pellegrini was someone who introduced me to the subject, and I appreciate his introducing me to this subject, which is very interesting. It is in fact related to what I said before, the interest of collective effects, collective behavior. When you're building a storage ring, you don't want these collective effects to come and tear the thing apart. Maybe it's even like cancer, for all I know. It can have very negative effects of collective effects. But actually, in the case of free electron laser, you want to make the system very unstable, so it does have this collective instability. And when it goes unstable, it gives off copious X-rays in very coherent ways that can be used to do science. There was a period that Liwa, you and I worked very close together on the free electron lasers. And we even had some success, and I think did some things that hadn't been done before by others. And the most important thing is, I think it gave us both some satisfaction to do some work that actually was competitive with the world on that particular problem, and led to maybe some deeper understanding of how free electrons work, lasers work on the theory. Later, Alain came and joined me and Liwa, and he brought the ability to try to make it not just that Liwa and I could do this theory on our own, but neither of us had the social abilities to turn it into a machine, or to get the money, or to that. Alain came with those capabilities of both intellectual understanding and also the abilities, gave us the ability to turn it into, to make it into real experiments, not just theory. Mm-hmm. When I accomplish something, I think it's never over a long time, it's over a short time, maybe, and I probably need to be pushed by need, because I think if I'm just left to do what I want, I sit and think, I want to be with my family. That's where probably, when I just look, where am I really drawn to myself? It's just one of those things. And also, it's a mystery that sometimes if I care too much about some kind of work, I can't get anywhere. But if I don't care so much, things work better. Or maybe if I'm thinking too deeply about it, nothing happens. But if there's only little flashes of time, maybe so much happens in the unconscious part of the mind. Maybe even if there's only, if you're pressed to do all kinds of other things, maybe something comes out, or who knows. It's a mystery. Somehow my heart was in statistical mechanics, but circumstances always conspire such that I never had much time to do it. And in fact, when I did accelerator physics, there was some spirit that I got from, some ideas that I got from statistical mechanics that I still found realized in things like collective effects and stuff that I enjoyed, that were beyond just trying to make something work, and gave me ways, even in FEL, to think about problems, not in the details, but conceptually, that came from my thinking about statistics. And It's ironic, although in terms of subject matter, that's what was always closest to me, this problem, some of the problems distal mechanics, but I only got to work on it when I was so young and immature and in so short a time. There really isn't a big impact of my work. It didn't really do anything of significant, except that it gave me pleasure. And it gave me even insight into things, other fields, even accelerated physics beyond, but not in a specific way, just in a more general way of how systems work. It is, to me, unfortunate that this illness came at this time, because I thought I had some resources, I had some time. I thought I never wanted to publish anything else on the subject, but there was a period just not so long ago where I was just reading a little about steel mechanics in relation to some work I did that's even some high-energy physics, relation of steel mechanics to other things, although I didn't have time to work it at that time, but I was just reading about it. I felt I had some much deeper understanding of things that was coming very easy to me at that moment. I just thought, gee, I'd retire in a short time. I would never write anything, because I think if I did something significant, but I didn't think I would. But I thought I could there could be some things that I thought I could understand better than I did when I was working on it. And the weird thing is, although I wasn't young, that things were coming sort of easy. I had very little time. I was just thinking about these things, and maybe it's just subjective. Maybe just some feeling like I understood, and maybe I didn't really understand. But I felt like I understood certain things pretty easily that I had trouble understanding before.
Having seen this video and getting a little thought to how Sam ended his life, finished it, I think it's appropriate to quote Shakespeare and say of him that nothing in his life became what he wanted. Shakespeare was one of Sam's favorite poets. On our first real date, he invited me to see Measure for Measure at the Stratford Shakespeare Festival. At that time, he surprised me by preparing a sumptuous picnic dinner. Chicken that he had grilled himself, plus also corned beef sandwiches, mangoes, crusty bread, Gouda cheese, wine, and ginger ale. The truly funny part of our date was, other than the vast amount of food, was that the cheese, the corned beef, and the wine made us very, very thirsty. So that during each intermission, we rushed to the water cooler to drink enough to get us through the next act. We shared a life of laughter and surprise. And though I am sad to say he never fed me like that ever again, his preference was for healthier food in moderate proportions. He did retain his love of Shakespeare, and he took to buying videos of all the plays he liked and their several acclaimed performances. Sam undermined very quickly my liberal arts prejudice that scientists, especially those from MIT, were one-dimensional and narrow in their interests. Sam certainly had a greater appreciation of poetry at that time than I did of physics. And in this respect, he always remained more balanced than I, since his knowledge and understanding of literature and poetry continued to grow, unlike my own rudimentary grasp of physics and other sciences, although I did take physics 23 in college and I got a little bus. I pretty much stopped there. Sam was a man of surprises and depth. My favorite moment in early parenting is the night that he had spent walking the floor with colicky 4-week-old Ben. After a couple of hours, he murmured to his son, "The burnt-out ends of smoky days, Ben. The burnt-out ends of smoky days." Of course, I never knew that he had read some of my favorite lines from T.S. Eliot, and that he had loved them enough to learn them by heart, and that he would share them with a wailing baby. It was years before cats, and it was one of the biggest surprises. I think it is safe to say that everybody here knows that Sam was a man of few words. But I think only a few of you know that he used this aspect of his personality to develop a skill and subtlety in composing haiku. This talent blossomed when we were in Palo Alto during Sam's sabbatical at SLAC. The Palo Alto Weekly ran a contest asking for haikus to paint on the wall of the new Caltrain parking garage. Sam, unlike his wife, the creative writing teacher, Sam was one of the 16 winners. So that year he wrote 5 physics papers and was also published in Concrete. He was inspired, as always, by his admiration for the markings of Hazel, our little tiger cat. So his poem is on the back of your programs, and I'll read it for you. Among fallen leaves, silent, black, velvet paws, stalk small, gossiping birds. That is his own published haiku. It's in Concrete, and it's at the Caltrain station, should you go to Palo Alto and take the train. Every year, for my birthday or anniversary or Christmas, he would buy me a beautiful handmade card on which he would compose a new haiku just for me. They are all in a notebook, but last winter he suggested that I put together a book of family poems with selections written by each of us. So that collection of family verse will be my project for the coming winter. At the dance party we held to celebrate our 40th wedding anniversary, Sam surprised me again by reciting an original love poem in front of everybody. Every woman in the room was in tears except for me. I kept saying over and over in utter astonishment, he wrote a villanelle. He wrote a villanelle. Sam had figured out how to do this tricky verse form by Googling it, because he knew that I would know what it was, and that I would be delighted that he had undertaken a poem so complicated that I used to only assign it to my most talented